This is Sporting Life.
Well, welcome along to the Sporting Life Racing Podcast. And then there were four. A fab four is David Orr, joined by Graham Cunningham, Ed Chamberlin, David Johnson. We'll hear at the end of the show too from York Chief Executive and Clerk of the Course, William Darby. We need to start, though, some sad news just breaking before we recorded the podcast. GC, the death of Reg Akers, a trainer who made his impact in many a major handicap.
Yeah, morning all. Hope everyone's okay. Yeah, you have to be knocking on a bit to remember Reg Akers, even in the second phase of his career, let alone the first. But he was absolutely mustard at winning big handicaps with well-backed horses, often from other yards. I think the key one in my memory came quite late. A horse called Urgent Request. He wasn't pulling up any trees for Barry Hills, top trainer himself. Went to Reg, bolted up in that Northern Dancer handicap at the Derby meeting, bolted up in the Rose of Lancaster Stakes a few weeks later, Group 2 at Haydock. But the list is very, very long. Everyone will have the favourites. Ed, Luke Harvey, Welsh National, Cool Ground for Reg Akers. So many big days for Reg Akers. If you want to learn about him and you want to learn about how to write about horse racing with style, find Richard Edmondson's tribute to him on his second retirement, which I think was 1997. Beautifully written. And if I can find it, one little quote from Reg Akers, which sort of summed him up. Richard's tone was that this bloke, would pass for a kindly old granddad, but he was absolutely deadly. And he said when he retired that, what was the secret? Quote, loving the horses is all there is to it. What a lovely quote.
Ah, lovely quote. And David, it was not synonymous with gambles. The money wasn't left behind very often when it went either.
No, exactly. Like you say, I mean, GC was there saying about needing to go a long way back, and Reg Akers is just probably a little bit before when I got into racing. I think he'd pretty much handed the license over to his son by the time that I started following, and he just had such big shoes to fill because, like you say, there was that reputation of him being such a shrewd cookie when it came to landing those big pots. And it is quite easy to find that article if you go into Google. That was pretty much the first or second one that came in when I had a look. And just reading through that, the list of big races that he was winning back in the day is pretty impressive.
Now, Ed Chamberlin, congratulations. Sarah Lancashire, Ed Chamberlin, two-time BAFTA winners. How good was it Sunday night?
Thank you, Audrey. That's kind. Utterly surreal, to be honest with you. It was an extraordinary evening. I thought we had a chance. The Women's World Cup would probably have been favourite for it, and they did a great job. But as GC will know in TV, they use a world feed for the game in a football match like that. And that day at Cheltenham, we cut every picture, did it all ourselves. And then again, it wasn't a difficult story to tell, was it? With all the emotion of Honeysuckle and the brilliance of Constitution Hill. And it was lovely to take racing in that environment. You look to your left and you got Brian Cox from Succession. You had all sorts of people from Jeff Goldblum to the cast from Happy Valley, Top Boy, and then the tiniest sprinkling of sports people. So hopefully it was great for racing. It means a lot to the team. You don't think about what Alice Plunkett does in the paddock and has done for such a long time for Channel 4 and ITV, and it blows people away when they see that. And Adi, the cameraman, walking backwards, and all these things that we take for granted in television just blew the BAFTA judges away. And obviously the Honeysuckle story really resonated. So, I didn't hesitate in dedicating it to the de Bromhead family and what they went through. And on a personal level, Audie, it's fun. I do get a lot of stick. I think anyone who does this job would get a lot of stick. I think I probably get more stick because, I'm an outsider coming to present horse racing. And I get that. I understand that. And I actually spoke to Paddy Brennan in the bar yesterday, and he admitted when I first started doing it, he didn't like me one iota. Didn't like the way I went about it. Didn't like the way ITV did it. And I just explained why we do what we do. There's a very lot of noisy people in racing. There aren't many of them. And we're broadcasting to a huge audience. and we ended up as best friends. It was great. And, you know, I see myself as a sports presenter presenting racing. I'm not a racing presenter. I never could be. I can't do it. I haven't got that knowledge or talent. And I'm presenting horse racing on an entertainment channel. You know, ITV is Ant and Deck, it's Emmerdale, it's Crossroads, it's whatever. You know, it's an entertainment channel, and hopefully we go about it the right way. One day we might be driven away. We might well be driven away. Might have to, you know, legislation might change, but it'll only be then, I think, that racing people will realize how lucky they've been with the BBC, Channel 4, and now us. I don't think they'll realize it until they don't have it. And that day will come.
I think one of the key things as well to focus on is how important it is that we keep putting the right races on the tracks to make it so that Ed and the team at ITV can tell the stories. You know, we needed Constitution Hill that day. We needed Honeysuckle there. If they hadn't have run, if they hadn't have done what they did, it's unlikely that, you know, Ed would have been at the front collecting that award. And that being the case, you know, we can't allow the Cheltenham Festival to just sort of fritter away and become that sort of festival where horses aren't taking each other on at the highest level. You know, we're going to need them to keep taking each other on, and, you know, just really hoping that they're going to learn from this year and really make those decisive changes that are needed to keep the sport as relevant as interesting as possible.
Well said, DJ. Ed, look at Ed there. He's radiant. He's glowing.
I'm tired, GC. I'm tired.
And rightly so. And who else had a Crossroads reference on the bingo card for today? But it's well done, Ed. Congratulations in all seriousness. But
thanks, GC.
I've had some private feedback on the podcast and ways to improve it. And as long as this podcast continues to be the most clicked on this website, I'll continue to put the work in. With all credit to the backroom boys, run on.
That is always for Jason. And a quick question from one of your regular podcast people, Ed. You won the award for Tuesday. What did BAFTA not like about the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday shows? I put it down to Ollie Bell in the social stable, but I was overruled. But no,
I don't want Ed to comment on this, but I think Brian Cox was filthy when Timothy Spall pipped him to that gong for the best actor. Brian Cox was not looking chuffed about that. He'd dressed up in his white tie and tails for the occasion and pipped to the post by Timothy Spall.
I mean, to be fair, all he got to do was present Lorraine Kelly with a Lifetime Achievement Award, wasn't it? It's a long way, lot to get dressed up.
You really were watching. Crikey, Moses. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen a frame of it.
Yeah. Sunday nights of rock and roll in my house. We're going to look back at some of the trial action. We must start with one of the most difficult days I'd imagine Ed broadcasting career at Chester. The Chester Bard, we'd seen a brilliant winner, catapulting himself surely to Derby favouritism. A stride late after the line, a catastrophic leg injury. It sadly couldn't be saved. I mean, you look back now, reflections. How do you even deal with something like that at the time?
What DJ said there is right. You know, we need those stories to tell. And to be honest with you, presenting a day like Constitution Hill and Honeysuckle is a piece of cake compared to last week. You know, the great thing about Honeysuckle, as I said on Sunday night, I didn't need to say much. Let the pictures do the talking for me. What a contrast at Chester. I mean, it was absolutely brutal, to be honest. From our end, credit to our director, Tim Gooden. He saw it happening very quickly and cut off it because you would not want too many people to see what happened. Richard Hoyles is a maestro on commentary. We're blessed in this country, you know. Simon Holtz, John Hunt, Stuart Machin, Richard Hoyles are just masters of their craft.
Yeah.
And Hoylesy was in a very difficult situation. They're harder than mine. And he used all his experience and did a great job. And you've then got to get the tone right, Audie. You've just got to try and get the tone right. This is our sport. Our sport is tough. But at the same time, you know, I'm stood next to Charlie Appleby, about to shake his hand, and he's ecstatic after everything he's gone through last year. Remember how well he handled himself last year when things were going wrong? And he's just had the Guineas winner, and he's now going to have the Derby favourite with Arabian Crown as well. He looked ecstatic, and then suddenly, bang, he realised. And Wayne Thomas, who led the horse up, my heart just went out to those guys. Listen, we came off air and you're thinking, what just happened? You tried to get the tone right. You understand that is our sport, unfortunately. But you just try to get it right to a terrestrial audience. That is hard. It is really hard. I sat there for about half an hour afterwards, almost a little bit traumatized by it. But I can't even begin to imagine how the Godolphin team felt, how Charlie and Wayne and the team felt. My heart went out to them. It really did. And I hope that ancient wisdom bolts up on Thursday for those guys. I really do. It'd be magic if he goes and wins the Dante.
And DC, just of all the times it's happened, we touched last week on the podcast, the highs and lows of sport that you need, but our sport, you have to have both. But I think it's one of the starkest ones I've seen. It was such a shock and so
absolutely
healed of that performance.
Yeah, as the picture cut away, you feared the worst, and coming hard on the heels of a really tough winter in the jumps game. I don't know the total numbers. What I do know is that there was a real attrition rate at the upper end. Really good horses departing, and you don't quite expect to see it on the flat, but it's part and parcel of the sport. It was handled very well by all concerned, by all accounts, and we just hope we get a smoother run. Now, it's academic now, fellas, but what did everyone think? To me, he was looking like a real good quality Derby colt, that horse.
Oh yeah, real athlete. Yeah, so sad for them.
And David, it did look. I mean, obviously the quotes never came through, but I'd have been staggered had he not gone Derby favourite off the back of that performance.
Yeah, exactly. Look really good, in terms of the way that the race had panned out. Agenda was able to set a pretty soft pace in front. Hidden Law forced to concede in first run, picked him up strongly, won going away, did absolutely everything that you wanted to see in a horse, putting himself with a real chance of winning a Derby, sadly.
Let's talk about we've lost Billy Nash just to our day move and Harry Potter world. I mean, he's got two things we've lost Billy Nash. we've lost Fran Berry to a cancelled Aer Lingus flight. So we're going to try to look at some of the Irish horses that we've seen in action of late. I've got a new favourite thing, GC, on Twitter. It's Aidan O'Brien measuring City of Troy, because I think he's going to be. If he will do the Champions, he's going to be there with his chin on his shoulders again, isn't he?
I told you before, you cannot give me enough of this, and it's getting better. and there is no question that this narrative for City of Troy, whether he's trained on, it is the narrative of the Derby, and it's clear of the rest now. And to see him measuring, and there was I think it was Emma Berry from the TDN, there was a lovely absolutely or something like that just put the cherry on top. And he was saying, I don't think there were many bigger horses than him. It reminded me of remember when Porky Parry did the Cinnamon Challenge, and he said, that's one of the biggest tablespoons of cinnamon I've seen. Yeah. And it has this comedic element, but there's an underlying high importance and high seriousness to it. But of all the purple prose that Aidan's ever used, and I'm here for all of it, he's never put himself quite on the line as much as he has with this horse leading to the Derby. Now, even more so than Gus last year, saying that we've never sent a horse to the Derby with more ability than this one, etc., etc., etc. So in a year when the classics have been slow to catch fire, this Aidan narrative and his own judgment on the line is by far and away the most compelling angle to it all.
Isn't it a bit bonkers in 2024? When we first started, and we tried to get it introduced in 2016, we tried to get weighing scales. This is something that Paul McNamara, who was a director from outside of racing, he just thought was just complete common sense. He wanted to bring weighing scales to the racecourse at the stables and a height measurement for horses. So you'd be able to say this horse weighs whatever it was, which would be interesting for our audience. And we've got the Derby favourite, who we don't know how big he is. I mean,
16 once. It comes up to that.
Because we just couldn't make it happen. There was no interest in racing to make it happen. We got obstructed in every corner we tried to turn to make that happen. And so if someone says to me, how big is the Derby favourite City of Troy? I've read so I don't know. No one knows.
That's what you could do.
It just seems a bit mad to me, but there we go.
If you want a third BAFTA, Aidan measuring the entire Derby field with his chin. Joe, as they come into the parade ring at Epsom, just with a scorecard, that would be the...
On a slightly different angle, to me, it's not quite the height. When I saw him in the paddock, and Francesca was very good, Lydia Hislop made good comments, it was a sort of lightness of body compared, and that's where the weight angle comes in, as Ed says. I just wonder what the timeline of his weight has been. Saw Kevin Blake do a piece saying that um, uh, 10 kilos lighter or something, but there's no accuracy. What did he weigh last autumn? What does he weigh now? And guess what? They will know to the ounce because he'll be weighed frequently at Ballydoyle. But either way, Aidan's comments and performance in front of the media yesterday make it an even more interesting angle. What does everyone think right now? Because we're not going to learn anything new, with or against, or just don't know for City of Troy.
God, I'd be against, but with no confidence. I've genuinely got not a clue.
The problem with going big against him is, what have you got? Apart from the Godolphin horse that obviously won at Sandown. I mean, we're going to go on and talk about the winner of the Lingfield Derby trial, and obviously there's Ancient Wisdom as well in the dance.
And Los Angeles is stablemate.
Well, that's the thing though. Los Angeles, and you see what he did at the weekend, and I'm sure we'll talk on it in greater detail later, but that kind of level of form is miles away from what City of Troy was doing when winning the Dewhurst, so it's all well and good saying absolutely no chance, but the depth that just isn't there in terms of the opposition at the moment. So it'd be no surprise, if they do get him back. And obviously, Aidan still seems pretty confident, that the ability we know was there.
You're right. Lots of people in the newspaper say, I can't have him on my mind. I can't entertain him. Just lay him then. Very, very few people will want to lay him, knowing the precedents from last year.
Great point. Absolutely right.
Isn't it? Fascinating looking at the day. Let's talk about some of the other horses, because he's not going to be a lone dart, David. Aidan said yesterday he wanted to take his chin off his withers. It's not his withers, it's his shoulder. We'll talk about the other horses. Capulet, D Stakes winner. He looks like he's probably going to come. What did you make of his performance at the Rudy?
Yeah, it was good to see him back, I thought, in the D Stakes. Obviously, he reversed the form from Chelmsford with the Richard Hughes horse, the runner-up. And, I guess that's one of the angles that you look at. The Justify horse, first time out that wasn't on his game. He's shown improvement on his second start, so that'll be an interesting angle. Every reason to think Capulet will prove fully effective over 1.5 miles, given the way that he's bred. But, he doesn't have that star quality that what we saw last year with City of Troy, does he? So he's entitled to take his chance. But if you're a connections of any of the others, you're not running scared of a Capulet, are you?
What about a Los Angeles GC? We saw him. It's been a big trial over the years.
Of the horses I saw trialing over the weekend, I would be most encouraged by him. He's already got a Group 1 on his dance card, not a super deep one, but that form has been upheld more than once. I don't think he's a horse who does much more than necessary. I do think he's a horse who will handle Epsom well. He came around that bend at Leopardstown really, really smoothly. And I don't think he was doing any more than necessary in front. So I think Timeform have him on, I think it's 110p at the moment. So as David says, if you're 110p, you're a very smart horse. You need to improve appreciably to make a splash in a derby, but I think he will. And I think he's a definite top 4 candidate for me, Los Angeles. I think he's got more to come.
David, the final O'Brien, the one who finished second in that Chester Bars agenda, well beaten by the winner, but I think the 11 lengths clear in the third. They pulled Miles clear. He's a potential front running option at Epsom and something they
no
do.
No derby entry yet.
It did supplemented, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
He doesn't have an entry in the derby, and I think he looks an interesting staying prospect, doesn't he? But I was thinking without that derby entry, perhaps Royal Ascot might be more on his agenda. And obviously the Queen's Vase is a race that they've had a fair bit of success in the past in, isn't it? So I was wondering maybe if the agenda was more a Queen's Vase type.
I think they're going to look after him. They're speaking to Coolmore because he wouldn't effectively be 3 until something like May the 31st, which is what the day before the Derby, very late fall. So I just sense they're going to mind him a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, there's a different angle to this year's Derby, Ed, in that we've got a James
Thank
Fanshawe.
Thank
We've got
God.
James Fanshawe, train contender in Ambient Friendly, who visually was very impressive at Lingfield on Saturday.
And I was immediately corrected by Francesca Camani, the Spanish Ambiente Friendly.
Oh,
which
apologies.
means Bill Gredley. Oh, he does it with his horse, doesn't it? So effectively, it means environment in Spanish. Environment friendly, which is great, really. And honestly, you hear DJ speaking there, he's a godsend, because without him, it's going to be a Ballydoyle Godolphin smash up, really, and that's about it. And that's a hard narrative to sell. So him emerging is great for the race. I think Bill Gredley's already got plenty of traction in his 90s now, and going down memory lane with user friendly and environment friend will be great fun in the build up to the race. You always need hooks, and thank goodness we've got one. And Tim his son is a huge supporter of the sport. He might ride at the Olympics, Tim Gredley. Luke had to be shot down because he said he was the worst point-to-point rider he'd ever seen. And that's coming from Luke Harvey. I'd imagine he's seen some bad ones, but he's a brilliant, brilliant show jumper, passionate about racing. And for them to have a Derby contender is fantastic. And yeah, I mean, the form of the Lingfield race might not be up to much, but I like the way he did it. I sense in the field, and they were trying to teach him a bit because he'd been a bit free before that. And so it might be the first time we've seen really what he can do. And I love the way he stuck his neck out and really tried in the straight, and he did it well. And he'd be a player. I think both he and the horse that won at Sandown are probably gallopers. And listen, there might be something like City of Troy that's got a bit of brilliance to beat them. But to me, he looked rock solid. And he was backed immediately. The 16s disappeared very quickly. And in my role, which I described earlier, thank goodness he's come on the scene, because that's given us a hook in a Derby where we were struggling.
1:17 time form, David. Pretty handy.
Yeah, I don't think you can knock the form as such, backed up by a 1:13 time figure. So, and they went a lot quicker in this. I think the time was over 2 seconds quicker than the Oaks trial. So it does look pretty positive. But then I just want to hold back and not sort of get totally behind him, and I'm just really concerned with regards how Epsom and the whole day is going to be for this horse, because Ed touched on it there earlier about how keen he has been at times, and I mean, he's worn a hood on his first 3 starts, didn't he? And even, I mean, they went pretty hard in that Derby trial, and still in the early stages he was pulling, and we all know how difficult it can be for horses that get lit up in the early stages at Epsom. It's that big steep climb going uphill, and I just think poor Callum Shepherd, be delighted to have a ride like this in the Derby, but he's going to have a real tough time on his hands, I think, in the early stages, maybe even just getting him to post calm enough. But I think he's going to be a horse that's going to be very difficult to keep a lid on in the early stages of the race, and that would really be my concern with him. Not his lack of ability, because that 1:17 rating shows you that he's well capable of getting in the shake-up in a field at the moment that is lacking a real star. But I just think the whole Derby day extravaganza just might prove his undoing.
Do you see James Fanshawe, not a fantastic trainer over there? He's not synonymous with Derby. I think he's going to be his second Derby runner, but fantastic to see him with a bullet like this to fire.
Definitely. A really interesting character. And the fact that it may only be his second Derby runner tells you how difficult it is to find a genuine Derby colt. So no, he adds a fair bit of colour to the mix. I echo David's comments about his potential keenness running uphill for half a mile or so. But no, a 1:17 time form rating backed up by a pretty fast time figure. Plenty to like about him.
Good week, Ed, for Rafe Beckett when it came to the Oaks trials at Chester and Lingfield. Forvis Fairy, you got to me his 2 winners. Which one do you prefer in terms of Oaks candidate?
Good question. I think the Lingfield race, I mean, you could watch that over and over again. I'm still not quite sure what happened with Rubies of Red. And you'd worry about her coming down the hill. I do think Danielle's worth another chance on very rounded action she's got. I was surprised they ran her, actually, because the ground was quickening at Lingfield. And I sort of expected the Gosden to pull her out. I thought she actually ran really well in the circumstances. And I don't think Treasure was probably ever going to go to Epsom. I think the brief is to have as many Royal runners as they can at the Royal meeting. So the 3 of them might meet again. I don't think there's a lot between those 3. I think probably, you'd know more about it than me, DJ. I thought the Chester race was probably the better of the 2. The 2 Fairies look like 2 nice fillies, really. And I'd expect them both to take a big leap forward. I think Rafe's filly will definitely take a leap forward, and he's done well because 25% of that's owned by his wife, so he was popular. And I think with a bit of guesswork, I think in picking up the vibes, I think she'd probably be the pick of the two. He's got a good hand to play.
Yeah, in time form racings, there wasn't a huge amount between them, but you're right. Forest Fairy comes out the slightly better at 101p. You got to me on 99p, and I mean, we're talking about Rubies Are Red. I thought that was a massive eye catcher. Even I spotted that one. I just think you can talk about whether she'll handle the hill or not, but we've seen so many times that horses, how they can come on a huge amount for an experience like this, and I think she'll prove a different kettle of fish with this under her belt. And I think Ryan, if he could have a go of riding her again, he'd do a fair bit more, I think, as she was coming down the hill to try and keep her in closer touch. But the way she flew home, the ground that she made up, I'd be amazed if she wasn't the best of the fillies that we saw in the trials this week.
GC, she's bound for Epsom. Aidan didn't measure her on Monday, but he did confirm she's Oaks bound along with Ylang. I mean, I can remember Sun Princess winning it years ago as a maiden with a similar likely race. It has been done.
Yeah, but like Ed, a filly who gets that far back, around a turning track, Lingfield, Epsom, I'm not sure. I think of the fillies we've mentioned. I think I'd be keenest on Forest Fairy. I think she has potential to keep improving. She didn't have a lot in hand, but she had to wait for a clear run, and she's going the right way, and she has stamina aplenty. No knockout Oaks trials so far, not even Ylang. It looks a wide open race to me.
And just before we let her go, a couple of lines on the French classics at the weekend, GC. French 2000, Henry Longfellow went off favourite, couldn't get in the race. Dancing Gemini rattled home. Diego Velazquez, Sumion told Aidan, Group 1 winner waiting to happen. What was your take out
it wasn't Henry Longfellow's fault, Aidan. It was a tactical error on his part, he said. It was a slightly messy race. He got boxed in for quite a long time, Ryan Moore, on Henry Longfellow. But points to note, Dancing Gemini ran an absolute screamer, just beaten for Roger Teal, who now has, this would add plenty of colour, Ed.
Yeah.
A strong Epsom, potential strong Epsom trained contender for the Derby. He's definitely eyeing one or other Derby for a horse who's definitely bred to get 10 furlongs and perhaps a bit more. Dancing Gemini, Diego Velazquez ran well. The fillies race I thought was interesting. Hard luck for Brian Meehan, who nearly snagged a big one with Kathmandu. Vespertilio was a filly I really liked last season. She ran an excellent third, and she'll win a nice race this season. But keep the faith with that Godolphin filly, Romantic Style. It was never going to be easy for her from stall 14. She had to use up a lot of energy to get towards the front early on from that wide gate. And I think a mile is the absolute maximum of her stamina, but I do think she's good. And I think on another day, Romantic Style will show that she's every bit as good as she looked when she won the trial, beating those fillies who franked the form at Newmarket.
I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? That Group 3 at Deauville now.
Yeah.
I mean, Romantic Style, you must be right, GC. You must be right, because that was a lovely story. That was probably the best story at Lingfield at the weekend, the Marco Botti filly that won the Chartwell, who was fourth that day in the
Great Generation, as you called.
Yeah, Great Generation. And for Marco Gianni to be using Stefano's saddle was very moving. And another one to come out from the Imprudence and win. So that's probably one of the best Group 3s you'll ever see, I think.
Can I just mention one more angle from Chester? Should definitely mention the Passenger. The way he won the Huxley Stakes, I thought, was mighty impressive for the next few months. He's rated 124p by time form. That's only £1 behind King of Steel, who's currently favourite for the Prince of Wales Stakes and hasn't run yet this season. August Rodin's right up there at the top of the market. Who knows what to expect from him next time? That Passenger, fast ground at Ascot. I'm also almost tempted to get the each way points out anti-post, a bit like Ben last week.
Is he in the right hands? Is he in the right hands there, GC?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's developing a very similar profile to his old man, Ulysses, isn't he? Derby coming a bit too soon, and his 4-year-old season likely to be excellent, I think.
When is Jim Crowley going to twig that Israel wants holding on to for a little bit longer? Eh? How many times?
Poor old Jim. Is he not on the show? No, he's Ben Linfoot. He's been dropped after his anti-post points last week, unannounced. So he just burst up onto the scene and mentioned. David, have you got any final takeouts from last week's racing?
No, not pretty much. I think we covered it all. The French Guineas, I mean, must point out the way that both of the races were run, pretty slowly run, and just typical like French races, how they've all finished on top of each other. I don't think you'd rate either of the races quite as strong. Certainly, the French 2000 doesn't look anywhere near as strong as the British 2000, I don't think. And just on romantic style, I agree with GC. I don't think a mile is necessarily going to see her to optimum effect. I think she is in the Commonwealth Cup, but I just wondered if the Jersey might be the most ideal target for her back at 7. But obviously, that's only a Group 3. They might really want to have another go at a Group 1, given that she's got the penalty for winning the Prix Imprudence. So we'll see where she ends up. But yeah, I think she is still a good filly. And in terms of end of season ratings, she might still prove the best of those from that French 1000.
Now, YouTube viewers will have noticed you're hydrating. If you've had orange, you've had water. You're about to drive up to York. We're going to let you go after this final question to you. You're heading up to the Knavesmire for 3 days. Newbury then on Saturday for fascinating.
Well, looking forward to seeing my family at some point, actually. Yeah, as well.
What apart from your family, obviously number one, what are you most looking forward to this week then?
I'm looking forward to hearing from William Darby. I'll listen in to the Sporting Life pod because he must be chomping at the bit, the WD, because he's had to watch all these meetings, the Craven, the Guineas, Chester last week, and now it's York's turn. They must be raring to get going. I'm really looking forward to it. It's always good up there, isn't it, Audie? Musadura tomorrow. The sprint looks like an absolute belter. The Dante could well be the king of Derby trials, as it's so often been in recent years. And the place, I've seen some photos from the guys, the ITV team are already up there. It looks an absolute picture. And the rain, it's a bit of rain around today. It's raining here. Won't have done any harm either. So it's all set up perfectly, really. And they know how to put on a show there. And they're the best when it comes to listening to the customer. We say it often. And I think people coming to York this week will have a really good time. And hopefully things like the Clock Tower picnic area and that type of thing will get some really good trade. And really looking forward to it.
Well, we'll let you go, Ed. You can now depart for the Knavesmire and your long journey north. Better luck for the week, and we'll see you
Cheers,
there.
gang.
So, thanks
Take
to Ed.
care.
Cheers.
Ed exit says that, but we continue. We continue with our look forward, look ahead. GC, just before we look at York and Newbury, a couple of news stories bubbling away. Lee Mottershead again, very active with the industry stories in the Racing Post. The Crown Jewels potentially for sale was one of them. Reaction to unfortunately circling our premierisation as well. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I didn't get too deep into the Crown Jewels potentially being sold off because I think that story is a medium to long term story. It's not going to happen. The premierisation update from the Racing Post was valid, if a little early. We're only a few months into the project. I don't have any hard data on this. I suspect that we're going to get good horses maybe having the odd run extra here and there because of the better prize money. I do think the really small fields are not as big a concern as they used to be. The prize money has been shifted around. That was always a robbing Peter to pay Paul job, and Paul at the bottom is getting, if not shafted, then shortchanged to a certain extent. I think the competition might increase. That's a good thing. The allowing broadcasters to give stories time to breathe was always a load of bollocks, and it still is. It's the same number of races for ITV on the big days. I know what it's like. They don't have time to tell stories to any great degree when you've got 10 live races in 2.5 hours or whatever. Promoting racing, this is the real, they haven't done anything, as everybody knows. They haven't had a budget. They didn't have a plan. That's really poor. Ergo, engaging new fans is likely to be a non-starter for as long as you're not promoting the thing properly. So mixed reviews from me. It was peace in our time when all these bodies seemed to get together and agree. I think most people fairly close to the story knew that there were various parties around the table who didn't really agree, and now they're making the voices heard. No surprise.
Absolutely. I'm sure
just a couple of things I wanted to say on the premierisation. I think we're seeing a negative side on the Saturdays where we're getting these, what you might call the second tier meetings that are having to be forced to move out of the Premier slots. And I think that is going to have a potential negative effect on their crowds. And I also think that you also run the risk of turning people away from becoming long-standing race goers, because they're just not want to. People aren't going to want to go racing, I don't think, 4 o'clock onwards into the afternoon in the same way as what they would when it was a normal afternoon meeting, and then they might be tempted to hit on to the town afterwards. So I think that's a real negative, the way that they've shifted so many meetings out of the Saturday afternoon slot. But against that, I think the better racing on Sunday that's been around, I think that's a positive. Anybody that likes betting on all-weather racing in the same ways that I do, there've been some really positive changes to Southwell and Newcastle over the last couple of weeks. And if they can keep the good elements, i.e. better Sunday racing, and perhaps make sure that those second-tier meetings on Saturdays aren't being lost in the way that they are at the minute, and I think we can point to it and say, well, some of it has worked, but some of it probably needs to go back to the way it was.
I'm sure a topic that will be revisited at some stage in 2024. GC, the Dante week, always a big one for York and for us northern racegoers. Mutadora feature race on day one. Friendly Soul, miles clear on time form, about 11 to 10 top price. She looked very exciting, that Pretty Polly.
Yeah, and I was just looking at Odds Checker, and they have her at 10 to 1 for the Oaks, Epsom. Now, the mention after she won at Newmarket, and she won really well there, was potential French Oaks. But I think they may well use tomorrow as a test and a springboard. And 10 to 1 for Epsom would look a massive price if she does what I think she might do tomorrow. I think David will back me up on this. In winning that race at Newmarket, Friendly Soul hit the level, already has hit the level needed to win an average Musadora. And there could be more to come. There should be more to come, David, shouldn't there?
Yeah, I really think so. Friendly Soul, I mean, that Pretty Polly form just looks absolute mustard. The first two pulled miles clear in a really good time, and the kind of figures that they were producing was a similar rating to what the 1,000 Guineas winner produced. So, as GC says, she sets a really high standard for the others to aim at here, and I'm surprised that she's not around a 4 to 6 chance for a race like this, given the strength of what she's shown there. There's a little bit of rain around. I guess if the conditions were very much on the soft side, that would be a question mark that she'd have to answer. She's only raced on good ground and all weather at the minute, but it's not going to be a mud bath, is it at York? No matter how much rain they get, and I think Friendly Soul is going to be very tough to beat, and I think she would be an intriguing runner in the Oaks. She really would.
Let me walk that back slightly. I just looked at the first page of Odds Checker where she was 10 to 1. Unibet are the only firm who quote, and nobody else is quoting her at the moment, but I think everyone might be quoting her by mid-afternoon on Wednesday.
What price would you want for her in the Oaks with a run, roughly,
now,
do you think? Yeah.
Now? Oh, with a run?
Yeah.
Oh, God, if it's with a run, it means she's bolted up tomorrow. So with a run, I'd be tempted to take anything north of about 5 to 2. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, in terms of the standard that she sets, providing that she comes through tomorrow, okay, she'd take the world a beating. And, you look at the pedigree, she's by Kingman, isn't she? I guess that's the concern. The Frankel half Call the Wind stayed 2.5 miles, didn't she? So, we'd have to see. But, yeah, in terms of ability, Friendly Soul, I think she'll take the world a beating tomorrow at least.
When you look at the Oaks winners for the, do you know it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's 11 years since anyone not called Gosden or O'Brien won the Oaks.
Staggering, isn't it?
Rafe Beckett won it with Talent in 2013, and since then it's been a Gosden and Aidan and Thady. I was going to say duopoly, but triopoly might be the operative word.
And
if there is such a word.
If she bolts up, and they do roll the big dice that Johnny G has done in the past. GC, big field for the Duke of York. Actually, as you would direct, there's not much between them. It'd be a thrilling spectacle, but angles into it might be thin on the ground.
Yeah, my selection, 0.25 points each way, is the Spy Catcher. You're right, David will I'll clarify, but there must be 6, 7, 8 horses within a few pounds of each other. But Spycatcher, he ran second in this race 2 years ago, remember, and he split I Feel Princess when she was just about to go, gangbusters, and Minzal, subsequent Group 1 winner. Loads and loads of good runs since, including first time out in the Avenant Stakes. And I think I'm right in saying that the Spycatcher has Ryan Moore aboard for the first time. Salute to Carl Burke. It's a canny feat to get one horse good enough to run in a big sprint like this. I think he has 4 runners in the Duke of York this year, doesn't
he? It's mob-handed, isn't it? With quality sprinters, all of them. David, GCC said on time farm ratings, there's not much, but we've done a lot of them. Have you got any thoughts?
No, there isn't. As Your Blue, she heads the ratings, and that's based on what she achieved in winning this race last year. But significantly, last year she came into this on the up with a run behind her, having won at the Newmarket Guineas meeting. And I think that there's got to be a concern about whether she's going to find this coming a case of needing it to put a spot on for somewhere else a little bit further down the line. I thought you could make a case for so many of them, and obviously that's something that you can see from the ratings, whether it's the time form ratings, the official ratings, racing post ratings. It shows they're all very much together. And the one that interested me, because when I was looking, he was right towards the bottom of the odds checker grid, was Comanche Falls, who in terms of ability, he's pretty much as good as any of these. He's drawn in stall 15 on the wing, which might not necessarily be ideal, but in terms of the way that this race is likely to be run, most of the pace does look mid to high. You've obviously got Art Power, Washington Heights, Swing Along, and they're all sort of drawn 9 and upwards. So I thought he was going to be in the right place. He was third in the race last year. He's had a run behind him that's going to suggest he's going to come on for that fitness-wise. So, like I say, I thought he was as interesting as pretty much anything, but was down at around 16-20 to 1. So he'll do for me.
There you go. We've got the big Derby trial on Thursday, GC. The Al Basti Equiworld Dubai Dante Stakes. Been a fantastic point over the years, a fantastic race in its own right. Are we all in on Ancient Wisdom if there's an Epsom colt this time around?
Not necessarily. No knock on him. I will say right now, I don't think Ancient Wisdom is a horse who'll thrive at Epsom. We've talked about the Dubawi stats in the Derby. Dubawi, even without Hidden Law, looks like he could be mob-handed at Epsom this year. I would not be keen on Ancient Wisdom. If you watch it when he bolted up in the Autumn Stakes at Newmarket, lads, he wandered all over the shot to the right. He was emphatic in the end in the Vertem at Donny. Both these races on testing ground, by the way. But once again, he wandered both ways, as he asserted, and he's got this. It's a powerful but slightly ungainly action, and York should suit him well. Rain would suit him well, but I'm not convinced that even if he wins the Dante, that he's a legit Derby horse. And I think he might have a serious danger even on Thursday in the Al Basti Equiworld Dubai Dante Stakes, because Al Musmak, I think, is a little under the radar. He's already finished ahead of Ancient Wisdom when they fill the placings behind Rosalian in that really good race at Ascot and King George Day. And he didn't go backwards. He won a listed race at Haydock really tidily, and he was a very good second to Ghostwriter in the Royal Lodge Stakes, a race that's been polished by the likes of Capulet in recent times. So I don't think it's a done deal for Ancient Wisdom. I think Al Musmak can give him plenty of trouble on Thursday.
David, what's your view?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say Ancient Wisdom. He gives off sort of Hurricane Lane vibes to me, who obviously was well suited by York and won the Dante pretty impressively, and just didn't really seem to handle Epsom that well. And do remember seeing Ancient Wisdom when he won the Autumn Stakes. It was really impressive that day, but you could just see from his action that a little bit of cut in the ground is just going to suit him. So I think the reign that York are having now and for the rest of Tuesday, I think will be in his favour, and you could see him doing well in a Dante and shortening for the Derby without necessarily being one that you'd want to be back in it at Epsom. The one I'm really interested to see is this Caviar Heights of Carl Burke's, and he was really impressive in a listed race at Newmarket last time, won by 4 lengths, beating Sadati. And again, it's another one that those that are interested in the time figures will be looking at and thinking, yeah, that looked a really promising performance. And he's in the Derby, but at the moment, I don't think Carl Burt was necessarily that keen to commit him. If he was to run a really big race in York tomorrow, on Thursday, he might well be tempted to. And I think Caviar Heights is well capable of putting up a real tough race to Ancient Wisdom.
Yeah, but interesting renewal and potentially fascinating renewal, GC. Friday of the Yorkshire Cup. Vauban with William Buick jocked up. We've got Kyprios and Tower of London for Aidan. Gregory for John Gosden, Middle Earth, Nakibi. But that looks a cracker, Jack.
This is absolutely loaded. You're hard pressed to find a better Group 2. Now, I suspect that Kyprios won't run. I could be wrong on that. Tower of London has impressed me massively this season, both in Saudi and then winning the Dubai Gold Cup on World Cup night at Meydan. For a horse who stays well, and he clearly does, he looks like he's got a strong burst of finishing speed. Now, the problem is, having won in Dubai, he's picked up a £3 penalty. I don't know whether he's an intended runner, but he's a fascinating contender. But if you look at the time form ratings, he'll have to be a genuine Group 1 horse to give £3 to a field that's likely to include Al Kareem, Giavolotto. He won it last year, didn't he? Gregory looked really good for most of last season. Hamish is entered, but he's also in at Newbury over the weekend. Middle Earth was going really well towards the end of the last season. Vauban's in there. He would be fascinating. And he's jocked up William Buick for Willie Mullins. So that is, in many ways, that's as deep a race as there is at York all week. And it's a very deep 3 days overall indeed. So, no, crackerjack Yorkshire Cup.
Have you any angles into it, David?
Well, just interesting. I want to call out on this Middle Earth. Obviously, course and distance winner in the Melrose last year, and then tried and failed to Group 1 level in the St Leger. But he was always in the silks of Qatar Racing last year. But Kieran Maher has bought a share in him. So presumably, whatever he does in the Northern Hemisphere over the next few months, it's going to be a case of doing what they can to get him down there as a viable Melbourne Cup contender. Tower of London, I believe, is the one that is coming across. Kyprios, I think, is also in the Savile Beg, isn't he, on Friday as well. And I think that tends to be the race and the route that Aidan chooses for him. So, yeah, I think it does look really good. Tower of London, I was really impressed with him last time in Dubai. The turn of foot he showed there. I thought, never mind a Yorkshire Cup and a staying campaign, I thought they might be tempted by something like the Coronation Cup with him. So we'll see what they do with him after this. But he does look a horse of serious potential, and as much for coming back to 1.5 miles as going up to 2 miles, I think.
At shorter distances, am I wrong? I had it in my head that super speedy 2-year-old from last year, Big Evs, I thought he might be going to Haydock for the Temple Stakes, but he's declared for the is it a listed or a Group 3 sprint? I think it's a listed sprint on Thursday at York. So he's going to be giving a fair bit of weight to some smart sprinters, but good to see him back. Big Evs for Mick Appleby with Tom Marquand booked, and of course Tom, well, he rode him at Donny and he rode him when he won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint at Santa Anita as well.
Great to read as well that Mick got sent 2-year-olds by Deborah Abdullah off the back of Big Evs' success last season.
One runs today at Beverley in the first.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating. So good to see success being rewarded. David, we can't leave the podcast. Last but not least, the Lockinge at Newbury, Al Shakab Lockinge at Newbury on Saturday. Look at the time form ratings. Big Rocks v Inspiral. Rest battling out for third. It's a mouth-watering clash, that one, to kick off the miling season.
It is indeed, and I was a little bit surprised when I looked at the betting to see that Inspiral is favourite over Big Rock, and I just think we need to make sure that we're sending them the other way round, don't we? The ground at the moment, I think, is good to soft at Newbury, and there's showers around, and we might get really lucky looking at the forecast. There's a chance they could get 8 or 9 mil at the forecast I was looking at on Thursday, which would very much tip things in Big Rock's favour. And I just think, in terms of ability, he's at least as good as Inspiral. And I just think in terms of readiness, given how well Inspiral progressed as the season wore on last year and how effective she is on quick ground, I'd just be very surprised if she can run to her absolute best on softish ground on a reappearance. But in a rival like Big Rock, she'll have to. And I just think Big Rock is going to have a class edge against the vast majority of these. And I think he's the kind of horse that could go off a well-backed favourite on Saturday.
GC was brilliant at Ascot. Very different, very attritional conditions. Change of trainer this year, something new to the table for him?
Yeah, I've said that I didn't know much about his new trainer, Maurizio Guarnieri. I've looked him up. He's got quite a significant pedigree in Europe before he moved to Chantilly, in Italy and Spain, I think. So he's trained plenty of big winners. But it's just a rum do, Isn't it? When a horse who thrived so well for Christopher Head last year should be taken away on a whim, or so it seems. But either way, Big Rock has the ability to run very, very hard fractions when the ground is on the soft side. So I think the market will go as the weather goes for that clash at the weekend. Shouldn't discount Sharon, who was a supporting player in the good mile races last year, but since Sylvester D. Souza got on board this season, he's looked an improved horse, hasn't he?
Yeah, that's absolutely. He rises right at the top of his game and race fit, doesn't he? Well, that's it. So much to look forward to, isn't there, for this week at York and Newbury. We'll be back next week looking back on the action. Thanks to GC, David and Ed for their contributions. And before we leave you, time to grab a quick word with York Chief Executive and Clerk of the Course, William Darby. William, I'm looking out my window in Yorkshire. It's Tuesday lunchtime. It's grey, but the rain stopped. What's it like at York for the week?
Yes, that's right, David. So we've had rain this morning on Tuesday morning. We've had 3 millimetres so far. It's just fared up at the minute, lunchtime on Tuesday. We are due some more during the afternoon and perhaps into Wednesday morning. But after about lunchtime Wednesday, it looks fine weather, sort of cloudy, but largely dry, nice temperatures, 16, 17 degrees. So we were expecting the rain, and indeed we were quite hoping for the rain because it was just starting to quicken up before that rain came. We will do a going update this afternoon and tomorrow morning to get the latest, the up-to-date going, because the rain hasn't quite got in yet. But no, we're pleased to get some rain and good conditions for the Dante Festival.
3 brilliant days coming up. How pleased are you with the fields, how they've shaped up the big race fields?
Yeah, really well so far. We're still waiting, obviously, for Friday for the Boodles Yorkshire Cup, which could be the race of the week. But to have Ancient Wisdom in the Albasti Equerard Dante, the Racing Post or Vertum winner coming here, and if he runs well on Thursday, I can't see him not heading to the top of the Derby betting. So it looks really interesting, and it's for the first time ever, I think, for our 3 Group 2 races during the week for older horses. We've got the defending champions returning. We've got Azure Blue and the Clipper Duke of York on Wednesday. We've got Free Wind in the Middleton. And then, of course, it looks like Giavolotti of Marco Botti's is coming for the Boodles Yorkshire Cup. So no, it looks a really good field. Nice 2-year-old races, full handicaps to get stuck into. So high value, high quality racing.
Wonderful to be back. Every time I looked out my window this winter, we spoke to you on the last day of the season at York, and you were just about to begin the redevelopment, another exciting phase at York Racecourse. You wanted a dry winter. And every time I looked out the window, I thought, I felt so sorry for you and the team at York. Oh. Where are you now? There's a brilliant time-lapse video on Instagram for people to watch the work as it's been going on. Where are you now with that project?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, don't feel sorry for me. Feel sorry for the 80 or so guys that were doing the work in the mud and the rain, and on that time lapse, you can just see the rain relentlessly coming in. So it was a very wet winter, but they've made really good progress, and they're on time, they're on program. So the first phase was always due to be open for the Dante Festival, and that will be available for racegoers this week. So that's a new Roberto Pavilion, a grandstand and paddock facility with catering, betting, bars, etc. We've refurbished the Bustlethorpe stand, which is the furthest stand at the 1 furlong marker. So that's all had solar panels on the roof, and we've redone the steppings and that great viewing stand. So that's what's available for Dante. And then ahead of the Sky Bet Ebor Festival, we unlocked the whole development, which is Racegoer Lawns, Canopy, Theakston's Bars, Betting Shop, William Hill Betting Shop, new entrances. So that's on track to be opened, hopefully well ahead of the Ebor Festival. Really exciting development. It's taken a lot of work by the team, headed up by Lindham Group. Really good team. 90% of the materials and the firms came from Yorkshire. We've got sustainability built into the scheme. We've got rainwater harvesting, solar panels, a living roof, and lots of, so it's a really good development that hopefully will be here for many decades to come.
Can't wait to see that for the first time and how it progresses through the year. And just finally, William, from October to May, it always seems such a long time. The shutters come down, you're ready for new season. Just how excited are you and the team to be racing again this week?
Yeah, hugely excited. It's felt like a long winter for us with the weather and lots going on in the world. So just to be, the spring weather we had last week with Chester and the Guineas and that, all those nice horses coming out of hibernation. It's really looking forward to the season ahead. So much to look forward to, whether that's our music showcase evenings with Kaiser Chiefs and S Club, or our family days, or Macmillan Day. But every day at York, something slightly different, and I think the team are just really excited about welcoming the horses back. We had the Tassus Musadora filly from Aiden's just arrived this morning, Mayfair. And so the horses are back, and it's a great time of year to be alive, and we're looking forward to seeing how the Betfred Oaks and Derby picture unfolds over the next few days.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion and tips.